Thanks for joining me here in this conversation. I'm going to start off with another true story this time from New Jersey. The year was 1914. The date was December 10th, and a massive fire broke out in West Orange, New Jersey. 10 buildings of the 20 buildings of Thomas Edison, the great scientist, were on fire. And being a winter evening, it was dark. It was the biggest fire that city had known. And standing outside, Thomas Edison walks over to his son, Charles, and puts his hand over his shoulder and says, "Son, go call your mother. Let us all witness this moment." And Charles looks at his dad like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Yeah, go call your mother, because this is a moment in history where a lot of my innovation, a lot of the rubbish that I have put in so far is going into flames, and I want us to all as a family to witness it." So sure enough, he goes and calls his mother and they witness it. And the man is exhausted from this whole experience. And before the fire is out, he goes to sleep. The next morning, he wakes up and he makes a commitment that he's not going to fire a single person in his company, and that they will rebuild it from scratch. And they start making analysis of the losses of what has been damaged. And it's been just a little under $1 million back in 1914. So that comes to about $23 million in today's money. Only 25% of it is covered by insurance. The company bootstraps, everybody puts in their little bit. The company comes together, and within a year, they do $10 million in revenue. And so when somebody asked Thomas Edison, "How were you able to be so calm, be positive, be so sure that from all of your creation, all of the research, all of the innovation, all of the platform that you had built for all these years had completely gone to dust, and there you were witnessing as if really nothing had happened?" And he says, the quality was in the faith that we as humans far outmeasure any circumstances. And he had the faith that with the help of his team, that he could actually build back, and not only build back, but take it to heights that were far exceeding where they were before the fire had engulfed it. So the lesson there to learn from Thomas Edison's demeanor is when you learn to transform your fear into prudence, transform your pain into some meaningful reality. You take your mistakes into initiative and take your desire into an undertaking. That's when you and we, humanity, can thrive through any adversity. So folks, here we are to talk about the topic of resilience. Again, it's the subject that one of you has proposed, and it's very pertinent, I think, in the current circumstances that we're finding ourselves in, and where we are finding ourselves cornered every which way you look at it. I'll just tell you a circumstance just happening right here in my household. So yesterday, so we have the pandemic, you all know about it for the last 4 or 5 months. Then we have wildfires in our area, in Northern California, and especially in the Bay Area. We have 3-4 major directions in which it is kind of closing in. We have smoke for those who are not directly affected by the forest fire, by the wildfires. And on top of that, yesterday we lost power. We had power tripping because it's so hot out there. It's kind of unprecedented amount of heat. Everybody's running their AC, everybody's sitting at home. So it's not like, have a central air conditioning in a company. So everybody's done kind of running their own units. And because of the load on the system, we had a power outage. And so think about it, there's really nowhere to escape except one direction. I'm going to talk about it as we go through. So as we look through our life, as we look at our surroundings, as we look at our neighbors, children that we grew up with, you've got to ask yourself this question. When you have an abusive household, what are the circumstances in which Some children in the same household turn to drugs, and some children flourish. When you have a sadistic mother, how is it that one daughter turns out to be a serial killer, another one turns out to be a loving parent? And within the same concentration camp during the Holocaust, how is it that some survive and others perish? And we look at our own childhood and ask yourself, how many times have we made excuses for the circumstances? And we probably recognize certain people who have that inclination to find excuses, to kind of keep finding reasons for their failures, while others use the circumstances for reinforcement. So the magic word that differentiates the people who come out of the same circumstance with completely different end results is this word called resilience. And so let's talk about what does that word resilience mean. So I did a TEDx talk where I talk about this, and essentially resilience is your ability to bounce back from any adversity. Resilience is ability to persevere with the idea when everything in the world is telling you you can't. Whereas inside you, you have that spark that makes you believe that you can, that makes you believe that you are greater than the circumstances, that your conviction is louder than all of those voices that are telling you the opposite. And that conviction, that voice, that spark is what is going to lead you to creativity, the creativity that's the mother of all invention. And when individuals can focus their attention, an ability to hold a subject, think about when you watch a basketball game, right? So when you have this thing called the free throw line, when people are at the free throw line, you have all of this distraction from the audience, especially behind the board. You have these people fluttering, making noise, waving hands, shaking flags, etc. And the one that is the champion, the one that is going to persevere and prevail, is the one who can zone out all of that noises. That's why you actually call it, when you're talking about a sportsman being in the zone, a sportswoman being in the zone. Zone is the ability to be so completely internalized, so completely in union with the objective, with the goal, whatever it is, the finish line, whether it's the goal, whether it's the ball, whatever it is, that nothing else matters. Nothing else. You can't see anything else. There's a beautiful story from the Mahabharata where there is the Swayamvara. Swayamvara is when the bride, back in the day in ancient India, the bride chose her groom. And typically what would happen is, typically in a royal family, in a royal setting, a number of eligible people, young men, princes, would come to compete for the hand in marriage for this princess. So in the story of the Mahabharata, there was this Swayamvara, or the selection of the groom, where there was a rotating wheel. And on the rim of the wheel, there was a fish. And the role of the contestant was to shoot into the eye of the fish. But here's the catch. You're not actually looking up at the wheel that's rotating, but you're looking down at a pond, into a pond where you see the reflection of the wheel that is above. And you are asked to fire in the opposite direction to which you're looking. And Arjuna, the most well-known sung warrior, the sung archer of the time, he's the one who's able to do it. And it goes back to a time in his childhood when he's training under his teacher, Dronacharya. And Dronacharya is teaching the whole group of brothers. So there was the 5 Pandavas and there's the 100 Kauravas. and all of their cousins, they're together in this particular Gurukula, the school. And Dronacharya asked them to shoot at the bird that's on the tree. And so the first contestant comes up, the first child back in the day, and he takes his bow, aims the arrow at the bird. And so Dronacharya says, stop. What do you see? And the archer says, I see the branch, I see the bird. Stop, go. No, you're not going to fire. Next. What do you see? And the next person says, I see the branch, I see the bird. No, stop, go away. Next person come up. Take aim. What do you see? I see the bird. So stop, go away. And then Arjuna's turn, he comes up, he says, take aim. What do you see? Arjuna replies, I only see the eye of the bird. And he fires, and sure enough, he hits the target. So our ability to be able to stay focused on what is ours to do at that time helps us to be able to prevail over all of the surrounding noises that are here to make us uncertain, that are here to make us confused, that are here to make us follow the herd, which is what? Following the herd of being anxious, being distressed, being concerned, being confused. And so when we can turn that opportunity as a time to go within and find our center and ask ourselves, using the resources that I have at this time, what is my best ability to respond to the situation? And that is the basis of the one who prevails versus the ones who also ran. And my friend Dr. Dan Siegel says reflection, relationships, and even experience of resilience is about embracing the uncertainty. If there's one thing that this COVID has taught us, it is uncertainty is the new normal. And so the sooner that we can find our peace with it, you see, the brain is actually rigged from evolution. It is rigged to find certainty. I want to be able to always have a predictable future. I want to know, which is why people go to astrologers, people go to gurus, etc., to be able to find answers. They go to far extents to be able to know for certain how they can make sense of this uncertainty. And then you spend a lot of time and energy, and all you have is frustration at the end of it all, because no one knows. So to become comfortable, to be able to embrace uncertainty is a cornerstone, is a pillar of being able to deal with something with resilience. So the primary effect of any change, you think about what does real resilience actually do? The primary focus there is the change in our thoughts and attitude. It's not like something outside is changing. You think about it. So when I prevail, when I see something, I'm able to overcome, somebody doesn't, somebody's frustrated, whereas I stay calm. The change is only one thing. It is the way in which I am making sense of the situation. So there is the internalization, which is where we either thrive or we struggle. So it's really not even about the situation. Situations. You might have heard me say this before. Situations are situations. There is no such thing as good or bad. We assign to it as something being good or bad. And how different people can look at the same circumstance and everybody can derive a completely different meaning from it. So ask yourself, are you taking the moment to actually turn within and see how you can look at it with your own fresh pair of eyes? Or are you simply following, getting into the rut of what is everybody else saying? What, just kind of going with the herd. So now in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about 3 significant qualities that one needs to adopt in order to develop resilience, no matter what circumstances. You know what? Let's actually, before I get into offering you those 3 different methods, let me ask you to, first of all, define for yourself a situation in which you're feeling discomfort, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling dis-ease, you're feeling uncomfortable, you're feeling stressed. Think of any one thing. I'm going to give you a minute to think about this. And while you're thinking about it, if you're able to come up with something easily, great. If not, I'm going to offer you certain ways in which you can determine something that's bothering you. If you think about it, we human beings are wired to find safety, to find satisfaction, and connection. So these are the 3 primary things that drive us at the most fundamental level: safety, satisfaction, and connection. So to help you to identify something that is of dis-ease or bothering you, try to see if there's something within one of these 3 categories that I just laid out. So very likely there's something. Is there something that you're feeling anxious and fearful about? If so, maybe it's an element of safety. Is there something that you're feeling frustrated? Is there something that you're feeling disappointed by? Maybe there's something to do with satisfaction, an element of satisfaction that is not being fulfilled. Or if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling depressed, perhaps it's the 3rd thing. I'm feeling a lack of connection. So anyway, pick any one aspect, and I want you to hold on to that one aspect. Even write it down if you have a piece of paper in front of you. And the rest of this next 45 minutes or so that we have, I want to use that as the basis as we solve for it. Okay, so I mentioned there are 3 things that are going to help you to develop and build resilience. The first of which is to be firmly grounded in reality, acceptance of the circumstance that we find ourselves in. So in the Vietnam War, there were a lot of prisoners of war taken from the US Army, and some of them survived, some of them died. Some of them died not because of the torture. Yes, there was a lot of torture in there, but some of them died because of the psychosomatic effect of it, from the sadness, from the depression, from the anxiety, from the fear. And so those who did make it out, there was an interview done. They were asked, what was the single biggest factor that contributed towards some people perishing and some people persisting from the prisoner of war camp? And the single most important factor that came out from the survey was being overly optimistic. Now, optimism is obviously a good thing, right? I want to be able to see the glass half full. But when your optimism is floating in the air and not grounded on reality of what is actually happening in front of you, it's actually counterproductive. Having rose-colored glasses and thinking and living in a far reality can be dangerous when it comes to resolving conflicts. So when these prisoners were interviewed, they said that those people who kept saying, oh, by Thanksgiving, we will be out. By Christmas, we'll definitely be out. By July 4th, we'll be out. Those are the people who basically died with a broken heart. So that the thing that killed them ultimately was their expectation. So one of the things that is going to be very, very important as you seek to navigate through whatever that discomfort, the thing that's bothering you, ask yourself, are you seeing it for what it is? Are you facing it with your eyes, third eye, wide open, and not in some sort of a la la land reality of it? The second thing that is going to help you to develop a strong sense of resilience is trying to find meaning in what you're going through. I did an entire series about making sense of what we're going through right now through this pandemic crisis. Folks, we had started moving too fast, too quickly, no care, no sense of responsibility, no sense of commitment, no sense of gratitude for what this Mother Earth has been doing for us for generations. Our sense of consumption, our sense of entitlement, our sense of being able to use and throw had gone to limits where something had to give, and that's what's happening. We have put in the situation, as I've just explained to you, just around my neighborhood, my surroundings. I am having to really slow down and ask myself, what is the only thing? What are the most important things? And you think about it, I was talking to my mother yesterday and we were saying, look at it. It doesn't matter how much money you have because there's no jewelry to buy, because there's no weddings to go to, there's no parties to go to, there's no cars to flaunt. Nobody's around. Nobody's there to see you. Everybody's at home and doing what is most important, which is spending time with ourselves, spending time with loved ones, thinking about what matters the most. And so making sense of what you're going through. So Viktor Frankl wrote this very famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he talked about even in the worst of the times when he was most shattered by what is happening to his fellow companions in the concentration camp in Auschwitz. He talks about how he looked at that circumstance and says, one day I will be talking to a classroom full of people about the circumstance, about the situation. I will be breaking down the psychology of what I was going through at this time. Imagine that. So the lens with which he was seeing that complete adversity as an opportunity, as a material with which he could be sharing this with the world. So can you find meaning in whatever it is that you're going through? And like I said before, you're ascribing a sense of good or bad, benefit or loss, profit or not. You are ascribing that value to it. So you are the meaning maker in that story that you're living. And it's very important to be able to put the dots together and say, what is the circumstance? Life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you. Things are happening for my benefit. And life is here not just to make us happy, but life is here to wake us up. So what is it that you need to be awake to in the circumstance? If you find yourself struggling, if you find yourself depressed, if you find yourself bogged down by the heaviness of whatever the circumstance is. Which brings me to the third thing. Resilient people have a bizarre, uncanny knack to reinvent themselves. I can't help but to quote Jack Ma's life story. The guy, he struggled to finish high school, failed twice to get into college, rejected at 13 jobs, including the KFC in his area, failed at 2 startups that he tried to launch. And the third time, he does this thing called Alibaba, which becomes the biggest IPO that the stock exchange across the world has ever seen. $150 billion IPO, which makes him one of the richest men in the world and the richest man in China. Think about the persistence of the man to be able to say that I have what it takes. I have a grit I have creativity. And he kept reinventing, persisting until he saw the light and oh boy, did he see the light. So ask yourself, are you finding this opportunity to complain and cry, to be bogged down? Or are you seeing this as an opportunity for you to reinvent, to be able to see what is it that you need to change? How do we look at the circumstances where we find ourselves in and say, with these particular set of resources, whatever the constraints are, how can I use my skills? How can I use what opportunities I have to be able to do what I'm here to be doing? And you all have seen my journey, traveling across the world, went to 23 countries in 2019, and here we are, stuck at home for the last 5 months, and we are on Zoom land. You're all my Zoom buddies. And it's just been an amazing ride. And you know what is so satisfying is when I get comments back from some of you people saying, Jay, we don't feel like, we're missing you. Some of you have been to my retreats, some of you have been to my weekend work events, day workshops, etc., etc. And I hear the comment that you don't feel a difference between me being here, sitting in a computer somewhere far away, and you sitting in front of a computer in your living room. But I've got comments like, we feel you're here right in front of us, and it feels no different than some of those retreats that we've been in your energy, in your midst, along with other people. We're all sitting around a table and meditating, or sitting on the floor, what have you. And really, necessity is the mother of all invention. We had to do it. And look at this, it's been going on, and now there's YouTube, and this is being available, and hundreds of people are watching it. And when's the last time I've done so consistently, retreat after retreat, week after week, where there's been hundreds of people watching? And now it's happening. And it's like, not that I chose it, but I guess we adapted to the circumstance and says, how do we make the best of circumstances, given I have a resource, I have an interest, I have a life's purpose, and how do we make it happen? And 3 different app companies, I'm already on 3 apps since a couple of years. 3 different app companies have reached out to me just in the last 4 months, and have brought me on as a teacher. And because just the nature of how, when you make yourself more available, when you make yourself present on with the resources available, people see you, they find out about you, they kind of align with you, they like what you're doing. And then we're making a difference to hundreds of people. There's actually over 1,000 people listening between the meditation commentaries, between the YouTube and everything else that I have online. There's over 1,000 people every day. I'm humbled, folks. I'm grateful. I cannot imagine this kind of impact in my wildest dreams in the old paradigm where I was doing things face to face. I love that stuff. I love being in front of people. I love being, feeling the resonance and getting the feedback. And as I say something, you're reacting to it. I know how you feel, and therefore I continue that way, or I adjust my delivery. And now I'm talking to a computer screen, and I don't even know whether you're falling asleep or you're awake. But clearly something is resonating from all the comments and the consistent watch to the videos that are being watched. I can tell that you guys are getting something out of it. And I'm feeling very blessed. I feel very grateful that because of the circumstances, because of these things, that so many people are able to access me versus a group of whatever, 25, 50, 100 people in a room over a weekend. And I do a retreat maybe once a month at best. So ask yourself, how can you invent yourself? How can you improvise given your circumstances? So folks, with that, I would like for us to take us to the next level. So from this conversation, I would like for us to dive into ourselves. So before we dive into ourselves, first, a somatic exercise. I want you to give me a nice extension of your neck. So let your chin touch your chest as best as possible. And making a semi-clockwise turn, let your chin move towards your right shoulder, and let your right ear touch your right shoulder. And while you're letting your ear touch your right shoulder, make sure that your left shoulder is pressed down, so you're not accidentally lifting it up. Now roll your chin forward back to the front, to the chest, and continue that turn towards the left, and let your left ear touch your left shoulder while making sure your right shoulder is down. Bring it back. Let's do this a couple more times. Swinging to the other direction. Keeping your breathing going. Make sure you're not holding your breath at any moment. Going back to the right. And then finally to the left. And bring your neck back to the neutral position, upright. You can keep your eyes closed or wide open, whatever you feel comfortable. But in the next few moments, let's drop in to our heart space. Using breath as an anchor, gently turning your attention inwards. Underneath the skin, underneath the flesh. Even below the bones. At the very core of this body, there's an energy. And this energy flows from the very top of my head, through the core channel of the body, all the way down to my legs, to the feet, and to the tips of the toes. Now I want you to feel your tips of your toes right now. Wiggle them if you need to. If you can feel the tips of your toes, that means there's energy there. Now, gradually trace that energy as it flows through the bottom of the soles to the heels. Feel your heels right now. And then gradually let that energy flow up through the ankles towards the shin, up to the knees. Feel your knees right now. Moving further along, upwards through the thighs. Notice the energy center at the bottom of the spine. Gradually let this energy flow up through the abdomen, to the chest region, and then to the bottom of the neck. Now let's start with the tips of the fingers. Wiggle them if you need to. Touch the tips of your fingers if you need to, but feel the tips of your fingers. And gradually let the energy go through the palms, through the wrists, the forearm, to the elbow, up the upper arms, to the shoulders. And from the shoulders, converging from both shoulders towards the neck. Let the energy go up the neck, from the back of the neck to the back of the head. To the top of the head. To the front of the head. And let it rest at this place right at the bridge of the forehead. That's where the forehead meets the nose. This is the seat of consciousness in this body. This is the seat of all memories, the seat of creativity. Now, this is where I process the sensations of touch, smell, taste, hear. Through these eyes, I see. Through these ears, I can hear. Through this tongue, I taste. Through the skin, I experience touch. And through the nose, I smell. I am awake. I am present. I am detached. I don't have any roles and responsibilities at this moment. Just being. Nowhere to go, nothing to hide, and no one to impress. I'm just being here right now. While in the state of being, notice the pace of your thoughts. And notice the pace of your breath. the quality of your breathing. And notice how you feel in your entire body. And from the state of calmness, there is clarity. And from the state of clarity, tell yourself, how would you overcome that adversity that you have identified in your life? What would be the wise response to the situation that you find yourself in? Notice the wisdom that emerges from slowing down and going within. You have the wisdom to navigate through any challenge that you find yourself in. You have the guru right here within your own being that you need to seek advice from. And the wisdom is not to be found in some mountaintop or in a monastery. But all it takes is separating the soul from the role. And when you have this detachment, your supreme intelligence is accessible to you. At your own pace, whenever you're ready, I want you to come back to the circle. And I want you to share what is that wisdom that arose from being separated from the role. What was an aha? What was the challenge? Maybe if you want to go ahead and explain that a little bit as well. Go ahead and put this into the chat window and I will look through them. I've already started getting a few comments here. Great. I also encourage you, while you're typing in this, for those of you who have any questions that you want me to address, please go ahead and put that in the Q&A tab. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen. And that way I can take them as they come. So let's go with the comments that I'm seeing here. I'm seeing some Your energy comes across. Yay, that's great. I wish we could see you too. You could see us too. We love this weekly feeding. Wonderful. Jay, I hear everything you're sharing. What a gift for me. I spent 2 weekend retreats outside of SF. Sorry, I never completed my chat. Please ignore it. I will connect with when the time is right via email. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I appreciate it. Melissa is saying, Sylvia and I didn't want to come back. You see, one of the things about is grounded in reality, folks. See, this is the thing. This exercise is hopefully a demonstration of what you should be doing for yourself all the time. Being in a state where you're taking yourself away from the nitty-gritty of the complexity of the role. See, if we get so easily engulfed in it that we are able to not even differentiate that I and the situation are two different things. And when we get stuck with it, you don't have that clarity. You see? And so this is a small exercise. It's a small little practice where I want you to be able to do this every so often during the day, where you're separating yourself. And the greatness of an actor or an actress is the one who can play a part and leave the part and move on to the next part. The moment anybody gets stuck to a part and then that lingers with them as they go on to the next part, they're deemed a failure. They will not be able to be signing up for new movies. So yes, we played this role of detaching oneself. Get used to this and being able to do that as meaningful pauses, like bookends for any role. So we keep moving. We all play multiple roles during the course of the day. And then the ability to step back, detach and see, observe, to be able to analyze what's going on, to see things for what they are. That's the purpose of this thing. Okay, we want to be grounded in reality, but we're using this technique as the means to be able to access our supreme intelligence, like I said a while ago. Okay, so let's see. Jay, you are a beautiful spirit. I'm very grateful for you. To be continued at another time. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're a beautiful spirit too, because we are resonating. That's why you see the beauty. Clarity on the deepest thoughts of my personal desire. Okay, great. I found that not only I could look down at myself and see the wisdom I have myself, I think was what you mean, but what resonated, the wisdom of parents, gurus, wise people that were in my life. Yay. These were those not here, but I could feel the energy of them surrounding me. Yes, there are the stalwarts on whose shoulders are we standing on, and just close your eyes and feel their presence. Yes, they're all there. The wisdom I can access with the challenges and difficulties, to take that moment to be outside, not caught up. That is the whole concept of mindset. Sakshi Drishta is an ancient word of wisdom, an ancient phrase to say, how do you navigate through life challenges, is this idea of being a detached observer. And yes, when you become detached, you feel the presence of these guiding lights, guardian angels, ancestor souls, called it by different names in different cultures. But yes, you feel the presence of this amazing amount of wisdom that you're surrounded. You're being guided. It's just that we're so caught up we're all down in the in the weeds that we don't feel, first of all, connected with ourselves, let alone connected with these guardian angels, these guiding spirits. So excellent. Okay, so I have a question here. Satish is asking the question, separating soul from the role, can you elaborate on it? How is it related to detachment? So it's really detachment is what I'm talking about, right? So what we did here is, through this exercise of being able to, first of all, tune into our body, then tune into our breath, and tune into our being, what we did is that we were able to put our attention into something different, internalize, going back to the center. So think about it, right? Think about life as like a spherical room, and with each window at the end corner, on the side of these rooms, being different roles that we play. So we, each of us play brother, sister, mother, uncle, aunt, father, daughter, neighbor, civil citizen of society, professionally, you all have different roles and responsibilities. So each one of this, imagine them to be one of the windows of this spherical rooms, right? One of the facades of the spherical room. And so what I'm asking you to do is that every few moments, like maybe the end of one particular role, so maybe every hour, maybe every couple of hours, come back to the center of the room and sit in your rightful place of who you are, the being. Remember, you're not the doing, but you're the being, the incredibly resourceful, creative, charismatic, energetic, brilliant soul. Calm. You have all the resources. So I want you to come back to that, because when you come back to the center and sit in the middle of this room, that's when you're going to feel it. You're not going to feel it when you're stuck to one of the sides of, on the glass panes with your nose stubbing against that, looking out, trying to perfect yourself in that role. See, it's that our drive to being over perfect, perfectionism, right? Where we, at some point, we get so stuck to the glass that we can't even tell the difference between the role and the soul. That's when confusion, anxiety, dilemmas, frustration, all of that kick in when there's not the sense of separation. Because at the core of your being, your peace, love, kindness, joy, and power. So if you're not feeling any of this, it's because you're caught up in something external that's not really you. So you're fooling yourself into believing that you're that particular role or responsibility. So what I'm saying is coming back to the center, being in the state of soul, soul consciousness is what one way of looking at it. That's when you are able to do well in that next role. So that is detachment. Yes, that is the Sakshi Drishta we talked about. So next question here. I have put so much time and energy into developing myself internally, and I'm so grateful for the beautiful terrain I exist within, but I struggle because I want to share this world with. I live feeling separate and removed from the ones that are in my life. Like we live in different planets with different eyes of consciousness. What am I missing, Jay? I want to connect worlds with others. I want a connected world with others. Do I change the people, or am I missing something within? Okay, great question, Katie. So I wrote an entire article about this. And so this article was prompted by a friend of mine in San Diego. And she called me up one day and she says, Jay, I go to these family gatherings, and this is obviously pre-COVID. And she says, these are the people I grew up with. These are the people I loved. These are the people who I call as mine. And yet when I'm in the midst of all of this, the celebration that's going on, I'm like looking at myself and saying, why am I here? And how do these people really matter to me? And she says, I don't know of another tribe that I feel so biologically, or even from a time perspective, I've spent so much time with somebody. And she says, why do I feel this way? And so I wrote this article where you have to understand that there is something called the soul's journey. Okay, Maslow talked about the hierarchy of needs. Today, I talked about some of the fundamental needs. So Maslow talks about the thing about, food, water, clothing as being the fundamental thing. And above that, you have the next level where human beings want to not just have the basics, but want to secure for the future. Feeling a sense of safety is what I call today in one of the fundamental needs of humanity. And the next, they seek out and they want to form relationships. And the next, after that, they want a sense of recognition. They want to have a name in society. And then comes the fifth level of the hierarchy, which is transcendence. From the me, we go into the we. Okay. Now, he talked about all of these things happening in one lifetime, but I say that we are not beings of this one lifetime. We are beings of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. So the body that we see ourselves in, the circumstances, the people, the environment I see of myself, so these are all very finite constraints. I, the being, far outlive any of these physical constraints, whether it's the body, whether it's this particular environment, this neighborhood, these cousins, these relatives, etc. So think about it. I have been on that evolutionary path through millennia, lifetimes. So that means that if I find myself in the circumstance, I'm here to learn something. These people are here to teach me, and I'm also here to teach them. They're here to learn something from me as well. But then if I limit myself and say, hey, how come I don't feel a complete sense of belonging? No, that was never meant to be the purpose. Because you are on your own evolutionary trajectory and they are on their own. And not always do we all match up. And in fact, I will mention to you earlier today, where from one abusive household, you can have a flower and a completely rotten drug addict. And that's nothing, not nice about them. But the point is that they're struggling. Okay. How do these things? So the soul comes with it, brings with it the DNA of spirit. So I mentioned this in some of my talks where I say, if you look at the life of twins, what are twins? Born at the same time, to the same people, with the same DNA, nurtured the same, they're eating the same food, they're exposed to the same environment, but they end up being very different people as they grow up. And you probably know some people like that in your life. I do. I grew up with a couple of kids in my school who are twins, absolute identical twins. But one ended up being an aggressive, very successful businessman. Another one is very mellow, very environmentalist. He's now he's doing something in the health sciences field. Very different personalities. How does that happen? Because the starting point is not really what we see with the physical eyes. There's something that the soul brings with it, and the soul is on a journey, which is not, again, visible through this naked eyes. So for me trying to say that I have to be equal to this environment around me, no. You're probably here to uplift that environment that you find yourself in. And sometimes you find yourself in other circumstances, other environments, other groups, other gatherings where you feel uplifted. So there is a sense of nurturing and being nurtured, right? So it does not have to be that way. And it's very often not that way. Okay, next question. Why do I have a deep desire to break the rules at times when I feel too controlled? Example, drive really fast, greater than 100 miles an hour. Well, there's a desire to escape from the constraints that you find yourself in. All of these rules have been created, yes, to protect us. But some of them have become so rigid and so archaic and so meaningless in the current circumstances that you feel yourself more bogged down by the rules and regulations that you want to just break. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're needing to be free, which you already are, really. So it's only a kind of question of how much you have internalized these constraints, these rules, and these trappings of the world, and find yourself feeling jailed. But we aren't, right? Like I said, circumstance is something that we assign something to it. We assign a value to it, good, bad, interesting, boring. I feel a sense of freedom. I feel a sense of being burdened, etc., etc. So I can completely understand in the circumstances of so many rules and regulations that we find ourselves in, we feel the need to break out. And sometimes a breaking out happens in the most obscure and the most unwanted areas, one of which is what you're talking about, is driving over 100 miles an hour, which I personally do not recommend. There's other ways to break out of the shackles of the confines of society. And you see, I used the example of Viktor Frankl. Being in the concentration camp, he exercised his right to freedom. So we can all find multiple. We're not anywhere close to the circumstances that he found himself in. So ask yourself, what is it that is truly weighing me down? And wherein lies the answer to my sense of freedom, while keeping myself safe on the streets? It's not only, and the funny thing about this thing is, when I want to go out crazy and break the rules and drive over 100 miles an hour, it's not just my liberty and my recreation. I'm putting other people on the street at risk as well. So please be careful, be wise, and go to the root cause of that. Okay, I'm going to take one more question and we're going to call it a night. How can we practice that, since detachment is part of the journey? Okay, so I guess two-part question. Can you speak more about detachment and how that helps us to be able to be the observer, and how can we practice that, since detachment is part of the journey? I guess I spoke about this. I think I spoke about this at length. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this, that coming back to the center of who you truly are, that reminds you of what is it that truly matters, what is it that is truly mine. All else is transient. Anything that is not rooted in the state of soul consciousness, everything is come and it's meant to go. Okay, great. So I'm getting some compliments from different places. Thank you very much for everybody for joining. Send me some more requests for topics of what you want me to cover in the future weeks. With that, I wish you all a happy week ahead. Stay safe, be kind to everybody, and until I see you all again, be well.